So today I am giving my best crack at a well-formed thought as to why pornography is so bad and so incredibly intoxicating. Because I want to talk about a few things. So there's one thing that is pornography is really bad for you because of the chemical releases, the spiritual destruction, and then we have the brain. Okay, so let me paint a picture really quick. Your life started when you were born, just like everyone else. And as you learn things progressively throughout your life, you build neural networks. You build neurons, not just inside your brain, but throughout your entire body. Legitimately, you have neurons in your cells, in your organs, through your skin, all throughout your entire body. And this connects very intensely to your nervous system. Your neurons are actually a part of your nervous system, but you have a nervous system just like everyone else's, but then you have this nervous system that you build, right, progressively. And you can learn anything. So like when someone, if you're a baby, right, and then, as you grow up, someone teaches you how to write with both your right and your left hand. Not only you may favor one hand, but regardless, you will be able to write fluently with both hands, because when you're a child, your capacity to learn is so much greater because you have an undeveloped set of neurons and capacity to create neurons. Versus when you get older, you have a less capacity to create neurons and a already created neural network that has to degenerate in place of newly created neurons. Now, there's a whole other discussion as to why we get to be the kind of person, the way we look, the way we operate, the way our mental capacity causes us to get into pornography, the way our upbringing causes us to be this way. But regardless, the main focal point, and I'm gonna touch on, like I said, those three things, but the first one I'm gonna touch on is the brain. And when we use pornography, right, we build a neural network that says all these feelings, all these chemical sensations associated with the intimate parts of life, the intimate feelings that we have, the intimate thoughts, are now dealt with through this neural network. And this neural network happens to be that we open up our phone, our computer, our TV, whatever, we turn on a video, and it is absolutely disgusting in the context that it's on a screen and it's not natural. Most of it's not consensual, yada, yada, yada. Regardless, it isn't real. And so we build this neural network. There is an associated very high release of dopamine that reinforces this in the brain very intensely. And when we come to sexual sin, when we think about lust, it is because, truly, it is because it's actually powerful. Like, we're not downplaying this at all. Like, we're correct. This stuff is hard because it is actually hard. It's actually a rough thing to go through and reset and take head on. So there's that. The brain is a huge issue because if we start building these neural pathways and not properly monitoring ourselves and understanding this part of our lives, well, number one, pornography is just a road that's going to cause us to not be able to properly deal with some of the other things I'm going to be talking about. But number two, how are we ever going to really understand how to get past this? I mean, if we just understood that thing alone, then I'm thinking to myself, well, this is going to take some time. Number one, it's going to take, a lot of effort. It's going to take a lot of understanding that, it's not where I want to be and I want to be in a different place, right? It's going to take probably some support and, a good fair amount of reinforcement from my own self, day in and day out. And it's just some of the things I think you would naturally come upon when you understand that basic fact. Number two, I said, is the spiritual one. What did I say? I said the neural pathways in the brain, the spiritual aspect, and then just like I can't remember what I said. Well, let's go down the spiritual one, and then I'll talk about semen retention at the end. So spiritual pathways. So one of the things as men we experience is a very, very profound ability to be content with ourselves in any situation, amongst any circumstance. Men, over the course of centuries, have not died with joy, but with glory in many scenarios that they knew were foreseeably dangerous and foreseeably life-threatening. And they did it with not a smile on their face, but with a love in their heart. And I would say that is something that 99% of all men on the planet right now are incapable of actually achieving. And myself may even be included in that category. But the reason why that is because we used to have a better understanding of how life ought to be lived, and retention was one of those things, and lust was better understood. When we use pornography, it stimulates us to start to think in a pathway, right, that we've already forged, number one, but number two, that is not congruent with how the spirit needs to calm. There is no room inside of being calm and being quiet for a man to be tempted by any such thing, that be like even mundane things like sweets, or spending money on a silly thing, or watching your favorite show or whatever. When we're sitting in calm because it is calm, because the baseline level of our spirit is where we want to be. That's why we're sitting there. We're not sitting there because of any one thing. Most of the things that most men do in their lives are for a thing, are for a result, are for a purpose. The spirit has no purpose intended other than to be properly nourished for peace. Okay? I'm going to kind of break this down a little bit. Your spirit, when it is at peace, your body receives peace from the spirit. Okay? That's how I come to understand peace. It's not something that you decide in your mind. It's not something that you decide in your actions. No, it's something you decide in your person. It's an all-encompassing thing of both the mind, the actions, and the way we feel. And we don't understand how to go about getting that peace because we don't know the rules of life. And one of the rules of life is that if you want peace, you must be free from sin in many ways, and lust being one of the biggest ones. There's many other big ones, but you must be free from sin to experience peace. Now, there's many things that disrupt our peace for good reasons and for bad reasons. Bad reason, lust is always a bad reason. Here's a big one. Lust is always a bad reason, okay? The sins themselves are sins in the nature of wanting to do evil, or having an intention to do evil. The feelings that we experience, if they're met with the wrong context, I'm sorry, this is really heady, but this is just how the spiritual talk's going to go. If they're met with the wrong context, right, then we're either, number one, reading them wrong, or number two, we actually are correct and they need to be changed, okay? Or they need to be understood as to be sins, or they need to be acted on because they're not sins. So we experience these feelings as if we should go watch pornography, but the correct response is to say that, no, I understand that this is a feeling of lust, one that comes from the feelings of intimacy, one that it feels alike in intimacy, one that feels as if I am trying to, deal with a problem or, find love in this world, whatever. It may feel similar to, if I were married and wanting to engage with my wife, but it's not the same because the intentionality is lustful, right? Another example, you don't get mad at someone, getting mad at someone for being right about something. Let's say you're wrong and then someone else is right about something. Getting mad at them for the purpose that they were right is a bad thing. But to get frustrated or mad at them because they are being genuinely hurtful and genuinely awful to you, not saying it is right to be angry, but it is probably not a sin to experience anger as a result and then therefore have associated feelings and thoughts because that anger is arising. When we act in sin, right, when the intention is to inflict pain or harm or gain pleasure or what have you from someone else without proper consideration of where that's coming from, right, we have an experience of deep sin. And then when we experience feelings that do come naturally, right, in the right context, we have a good intentionality, and that is not sinful. And we used to understand this in life way back when, I would say roughly 300 years ago was right when things started to taper off big time. And then, slowly, little by little. But we used to understand these things big time, and this was a way to properly live life. It was a rule book, it was a blueprint, but most importantly, it was the way people interacted with each other, which was in a much more respectful manner. That's why life back then was more admirable, not necessarily more comfortable, Although there is a sort of comfort and admiration and respect. Okay, so the spirit itself, if we want peace, if we want to cultivate peace, if we want to get rid of anxiety, if we want to get rid of dependency, emotional dependency as men, we need to understand that the spirit is being destroyed by this pornography. It's being destroyed by this sexual sin. And when it is destroyed by sexual sin, we must combat it. Because we know that it is sin. It is not coming from any place that serves us. It's coming from a place that wants to hurt us. And that's okay. There's many things in life where that is the case. So we're just experiencing another thing, but in a different aspect of reality, and that happens to be in sex, that happens to be in intimacy. So the spirit needs proper fortification, right? And it needs combatants when experiencing this rough, lustful experience, as well as the last one, semen retention, is that the spirit, right, lustfully causes us to go into physical actions. So all things begin with a thought and a feeling, right? Or maybe just a thought. All things begin inside and then produce us to go outside, okay? Outside and use our body. So inside the body starts, and then we use our hands, our physical properties to create things in life due to the associated inside feelings and thoughts. And because of that, when we don't properly understand why we have those inside feelings, then we have a bodily experience, and that's because we didn't first nip it in the bud in our spirit. Retention. So retention is kind of the first thing that we need to come around to. So I kind of did a big loop around, but we should have started with retention. But I wanted to talk about pornography in the sense of how it affects the brain. So retention is the lack of, it's taking more control over the body than the spirit in the beginning, right? So someone who is, this is in the context of someone who is addicted to pornography, or someone who is watching this video trying to understand why pornography is actually bad and what it does. Pornography, the first thing that it does is it signals to the default that our brain experiences, the default that we go to. Like I said, we have this built up neural system on how to deal with these feelings, right? We have associated feelings, and then we have this neural network, and it goes down this path, and then we have a thought that pops into our mind. This thought happens to be that we should go watch pornography and masturbate. And retention, right, is saying no to the already associated neural network. Retention, I mean, it's an interior battle, but it is a physical change. It is an actionable step away, right? So lust, while it is much more spiritual, begins with the physical action, right? Because theoretically it begins, as you age, and if you do it properly and you go about life properly and you're taught properly, you don't have to worry about this. But if you're someone who is dealing with this, right, then you have to start by making a change in your actions, a commitment and an understanding mentally that this is what you need to do and here's why. Okay, and you can build that why as you go, right? But retention, what it does is it causes us to face these emotions. Because think about it like this: if the defaultness of your mind causes you to constantly think about not or doing something you don't want to do, right? Well, then you're going to have to deal with the negative emotions. Do you think that your life, after a while, let's say you did it for a year, do you think your life would just be constantly hell the whole time? And actually, you could think that. I could understand why that might feel as if that's the case. I'm telling you right now, the only way that you're going to be able to deal with this, and I wish it was much easier, like genuinely, you have to go through the intentional thought and physical change of not masturbating, of not watching pornography long enough for it to get actually really hard. Okay? Because here's the thing. When it is hard, right? When it is the hardest, that is when the most change happens. And you won't see it the second after you get away from it. You won't see it the day after. You're going to see it a month, maybe 2 months down the line. And that's because we won't be able to experience the changes in our neural networks until they're actually changed. And they take a lot of time. And then on top of that, we need to build a new neural network. We need to build a new place. And so that takes repeated actions of retaining, right? So we need to be going on streaks of retainment that go, even if, like, let's say we fail at a week our first time, we need to be going on a week plus the next time. We need to be striving to go longer. We need to be striving to get away from this as quickly and as much as possible, period. Because if we want to actually change, the more energy, the more times that we relapse, the more times that we give this energy, this old neural network energy, and this is, when I mean energy, I mean any thought, any prolonged fantasization, any actionable step, when we take those, we reinforce that part, okay? And that part needs to degrade. It needs to go away. And so the more amount of time that we can spend outside of it, it's not going to completely go away, but it is going to become more obvious in how to manage it, right? And if we can start to cultivate that, we're pretty much like 30 to 40% of the way there. And that's only like something that takes a couple weeks, right? If we can see that there is a genuine benefit to being on retention, right? Enough to see the destruction and the terribleness of our souls when we're not on retention, right? Then we've already built a new neural network saying that this old way of living life is bad, okay? So I know that I'm getting away period from just like talking about pornography, but this is kind of the cycle that pornography takes. It's one that infects the brain through physical, just physical ways that we exist. And then it creeps into our spirit because it came from the outside and is coming in, and now it's in the inside and it needs to come back out. It doesn't need to be in here anymore. It needs to get out of us, right? And the only way we can do that is by making changes to kill this thing that is inside of us. Most of the time, the thing that we are taking in, we can't put it back out because we already have it absorbed. We need to create a place for it to never be able to escape from, or kill it from ever getting bigger in our lives. And so, if this is something that like you're dealing with, if this is something that has caused you a lot of pain, I would suggest highly that you find a community, number one, to get in touch with. There's many communities that you can look up online. SLAA groups. I would just look that up on the websites, on the internet, and I would get connected with one ASAP. There's Discord chats. There is retention communities on Reddit where people talk so much more about many different things that they experience and things that they come to understand on retention, and it's extremely valuable and helpful. And I would also suggest to go there. But as a man, this is for me, it is one of the biggest things I have ever overcome. And I've overcome a lot of really weird and destructive tendencies that, similar to most people, are actually really hard, but are not as hard as this. This is one of the hardest, and it's the hardest because it's one of the ones that is most downplayed. It's one of the ones that is most not realized as an actual problem. And so when we understand that this is a real problem, we can actually start to make some real change. And so, yeah. If you want anything more from me, I would suggest leaving a comment in the description. If you have any ideas on videos or things that you want me to talk more about in a video, leave that down in the comments. If you like this video, then like it, please. And then subscribe if you like this sort of content and you want some more motivation and some more help. I try to post videos on here roughly once, maybe twice a week. And yeah, so I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.